What if one of your colleagues tried telling you a story like Akash did? I'm sure that you would also get a headache like Nandini did. What was wrong with Akash's narration? He had good language, there were no grammatical mistakes. So, why was his narration so annoying to hear? It is because he narrated his story in direct speech and not reported speech. Remember Akash saying, "Then I told him, this list is quite detailed. Then he told me, go through it and get back to me with any questions you have. Then I asked him, according to this list, I have only done the major tasks, etc., etc." He chose to tell the story like this, with all the he said and I said, but Akash could have easily narrated it in reported speech, and it would have been a pretty interesting narration rather than an annoying one. Listen to this. I told him that the list was quite detailed. He told me to go through it and get back to him with any questions I had. I pointed out that according to that list, I had completed only the main task and asked him about the additional responsibilities. He replied that my appraisal primarily depended on the main task assigned to me, and so on. Now, don't you think the narration would have been much easier to digest in this format when we used reported speech? So what is reported speech? Reported speech is when we report an actual conversation that happened to a third person. Certain changes are made to the sentences when you report it to a third person. These changes take place in the tenses we use, modal verbs, and the basic structure of a sentence. We will examine all these changes one by one in detail as we move forward. Let's convert what Akash told Nandini into reported speech and see the difference. This is what Akash told Nandini. I told him, this list is quite detailed. When we convert it into reported speech, we get the following sentence. I told him that the list was quite detailed. Now let's look at a different sentence. This is a sentence in direct speech. I told him, this list is quite detailed. Now when you convert this sentence into reported speech, the sentence should be, I told him that the list was quite detailed. If you look closely, we removed the quotation marks and the comma from the sentence first. The word that is introduced in the sentence. Using that is not mandatory, it is optional. Once these changes are made, you will get a sentence in reported speech. Let's try another sentence. He said, he saw her. How will you convert this sentence into reported speech? As explained earlier, the first step is to remove the commas and punctuation marks. During the conversion, changes occur to the nouns. So, I gets converted to he and saw gets converted to had seen. And then we get a sentence in reported speech, that is, he said that he had seen her. Again, use of that is optional. Now you might be thinking about how we made changes to more than one thing here. There are some rules associated with converting a sentence from direct speech to reported speech. Let's see what these rules are. Certain words such as nouns and pronouns change when you convert direct speech into reported speech. Let's see how the pronouns get converted. I in the sentence will be converted to he or she. Me will be converted to him or her. My to his or her. We to they. And you to I or me or he or she. What are the other changes you noticed when we change a sentence to reported speech? You may have noticed how tenses change when you change a sentence into reported speech. Take a look at this sentence. She said, we have been having daily project update meetings. When we convert this sentence into reported speech, it becomes, she said that they had been having daily project update meetings. Here have been changes to had been when we convert the sentence. Something called back shifting happens to the tenses. That is, we go back a tense. Hence the sentence travels backwards from present perfect continuous to past perfect continuous. Let's look in detail to what happens to the tenses in the sentence. Look at this sentence. Anisha said, Ram managed the project efficiently. Now see how the tenses change while we convert this sentence. Managed becomes had managed when we convert this sentence. Similarly, if this sentence contained these words, this is how the tenses will change while we convert them into reported speech. is managing will become was managing. Was managing will become had been managing. Has managed becomes had managed. However, had managed remains the same. The other major change happens to the modal verbs. What happens to the modal verbs such as can, will, shall, etc.? For instance, Rohit said, we can only complete the work if we work this weekend. When converted into reported speech, the sentence becomes, Rohit said that we could only complete the work if we work this weekend. Let's take a closer look. While converting a sentence into reported speech, this is how modal verbs change. Can becomes could, will becomes would, shall becomes should, may becomes might, and must changes to had to. Similarly, can't becomes could not, will not becomes would not, and so on. Another example of this change would be Arpita said, we can't arrange a meeting before this Friday. Arpita said that they could not arrange a meeting before this Friday. Please note that certain modals such as might, could, would, should, ought to do not change when converted to reported speech. I hope you learned a lot about reported speech through this session. We will see you again in another webisode. Happy learning!